Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today on the Community Ledger. Again, my name is Andrea Banu, and if you have not already, please go ahead and push that subscribe button so I can continue to get some love. And so now I want to jump into this interview that Bill Maher, did with Gavin Newsom. So as you know, Gavin Newsom has a podcast, and a couple weeks ago he sat down with Charlie Kirk, where he talked about how he does not believe that biological males competing in women's sports is necessarily fair. He got a lot of backlash from it, specifically from the LGBTQ community, because the state of California is very progressive. However, it seems like now he just seems to be unfazed by it. He's gone on Bill Maher and he's calling the Democratic Party toxic. So he is really trying to roll back a lot of the sentiments that align with the Democratic Party right now. I personally think he's trying to position himself to run for president in 2028, but I don't trust it. But nonetheless, I do think it's interesting to see. And we are also going to pull some receipts on how it just appears to be propaganda and it's not really his sentiment. So as much as he would like to give the appearance that he has changed and he's had his come to Jesus moment, and he realizes that they need to go ahead and correct some of their policies and their position in terms of our rights and the rights of women and things of that nature, there's something else a little bit more sinister going on in the background. So let's go ahead and get to it. Sorry about that.
And so that's the challenge we have. You want to cancel someone who's been with you on almost every critical issue at every critical juncture of decades, or cancel you because you have the audacity to go visit with Trump next week. I mean, you have more credibility to visit him than any goddamn person.
I think so.
I know you've been at this for 20 years.
And by the way, I give him a lot of credit for inviting me.
Yeah. By the way, and learn something from that, Democrats.
Yeah.
I'm serious about this. It's not zero sum. We're not winning right now. He won by 2.3 million votes. We lost the House and the Senate. And we're in a panic. I get it, for good reason.
Yes.
This guy's not screwing around.
Right.
But we need to own our mistakes. So we need to own what's wrong with our party.
All right. So given that last question, given that we are in this dire situation, I feel like we don't have time anymore for the old bullshit. The old, are you running for president? Well, there's an exploratory committee and I'm looking at it. I'm happy with my job as governor. I mean, your future is not in California. Your future is in Iowa. Let's dispense with the bullshit. We need someone who's going to be the champion. Are you going to do it or not? Just come on. Tell us. We don't have time for the bullshit.
By the way, I deeply respect that. I can't stand the bullshit as well. And I mean that. So look, but this is not my purpose or passion. It's not my meaning. It's not everything. The cynicism that's out there, that every move he's making is some move to some longer term strategy or short term strategy.
Just that you're a guy who could do it, who could get it done, who could win.
I deeply respect that. I respect the question, but I don't have any grand plans as it respects to that. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm also trying to be accountable. By the way, you want things to change, you got to change. And that's what the podcast is about. That's my recognition of where we're weak.
Can I do
you
it?
got to call balls and strikes.
Can I be on your podcast?
You want to come on the podcast?
Can
I? So just so that you're aware, Gavin Newsom, so Bill Maher is telling him that he thinks that he can do it. He can run, he can galvanize the party. He thinks that Gavin Newsom is prepared to really take a real stand in this presidential run in 2028. I'm not too sure about it because right before the election with Miss Kamala, I don't know if you guys were following what was happening in California, but there was a reparations bill that, was up for vote in California. And Gavin Newsom made sure that vote or that particular bill was kind of just dismissed. They didn't even get to vote on it. So he didn't even want to worry about people agreeing to it or not agreeing to it, which is political because you want to know which politicians support this and which ones don't. So they just they just trashed the bill completely. They had so many Black people in California up in arms. I mean, they were pissed. And a lot of those Black caucus members were laughing at the community. They were just like, please, y'all not getting nothing, yada, yada, yada. Soon after that, he got so much backlash that he issued some sort of an apology for slavery. This is going to be this monumental ceremonial piece of paper of Gavin Newsom giving his apology to African Americans for slavery. Wait a minute now. Did you really think that was going to be enough? Did you really think all those people that are pissed at you about you not even putting that reparations bill up for vote were going to be satisfied with a piece of paper that said, I'm sorry, an apology? No. Black people are still pissed, and they have not forgot about that. And they showed they ass during that Kamala Harris campaign, and they were not voting for her, okay? Those people, do you realize how many counties in California went red? And California is a serious Democratic state, but so many people in California were pissed that, they completely turned Republican. And so those people are still pissed. And now Gavin Newsom is still the governor. They remember that, as well as the fires that happened right after that. Okay. And a lot of people are still pissed off about how Gavin Newsom handled those fires in California. So for him to think that he's going to be able to position himself and align himself with the Democratic Party to where he can run in 2028, he's going to have to do a whole lot of mind changing. Okay. Because I personally don't see it. And I don't even see how Bill Maher is seeing it, because I don't know who they're going to get, but I don't see Gavin Newsom being their man. And then I want to get into exactly what is being said in the public in regards to him speaking about the Democrats being toxic. Let me get rid of this. I'm so sorry. Okay, perfect. It says Gavin Newsom torches toxic Dems, urges parties to talk to Republicans if they want to win. And so it says California Governor Gavin Newsom torches his own political party and said Democrats have to speak to Republicans and reject cancel culture if they want to win. The Democratic brand is toxic right now. These are his words. The Democratic brand is toxic right now. The Democratic leader told Bill Maher Friday, citing the party's dismal approval ratings. Just 27% of those surveyed said they had positive views of the party, a recent NBC poll showed. It's one thing to make noise, but you also have to make sense, Newsom said. Urges Dems to dialogue if they want to stop being crushed. He talked up his newly launched podcast, This Is Gavin Newsom, as an example of how Democrats can find their footing. And then it goes on. I think with this podcast and having the opportunity to dialogue with people I disagree with, it's an opportunity to try to find common ground and not take cheap shots, he said. I think it's important, Democrats, we tend to be a little bit more judgmental than we should be, he said, adding the party should own up to their support of cancel culture if they want to move forward. The Democratic Party has been floundering since the November elections. Newsom's assessment of the party's woes is diametrically opposed to the view of vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, who claimed this week that Democrats lost because they failed to double down on woke policies and diversity, equity, and inclusion. It also says Newsom, meanwhile, broke from the Democratic Party line earlier this month when he took a stand against transgender athletes playing in women's sports. I revere sports, so the issue of fairness is completely legit, Newsom told Kirk on his podcast. And I saw that the first couple years, boy, did I see how you guys were able to weaponize that issue at another level. Newsom was a key surrogate for former President Joe Biden and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris in 2024, traveling the country to deliver on the Democratic message. The governor has been long rumored as a presidential 2028 candidate for the White House, but he has kept quiet on his intentions, telling Maher, I've got no grand plans regarding the next presidential run, which is hogwash. We know they all say that. They all say, oh, I have no plans to run. I have no plans to run. Yeah, right. So, I would not be surprised. The one that, the truth be told, the one that I'm really looking at is going to be Josh Shapiro out in Pennsylvania. Because Josh Shapiro, when they talked about him being a possible running mate for Kamala, I was like, I don't think that's going to be a good look. If he wants to run and have a real chance at the White House, he cannot partner with Kamala. She is going to destroy his a possibility of ever getting to that White House. And I was so right. She picked Tim Walz, who had no chance anyway. And so when she picked him, it was like, there's no way she is going to win this presidential campaign. And I think it was really good for Josh Shapiro to not get into that because now he has, a clear avenue to actually run. I personally think that he is going to be, coming up in the ranks in terms of a real viable candidate in 2028. So he is definitely the one to watch. But Gavin Newsom, he's pissed too many people off in California. Californians are the ones that are still there and have not just completely fled are pissed. A lot of damage has been done with regards to these fires. People are over, all of the regulations and the red tape and the cost of living and the border and, all this other craziness that they've got going on in California, being that it's so progressive, that I just think it's going to be really, really hard for him to actually make any real headway in this next presidential election. But we'll see. We'll see. Also, I wanted to read what some people are saying in regards to his new stance or his new repositioning, so to speak. Let me see what I had another post here. Oh, okay. Yes, this one here. I got to share this with you. So this one is from X, where Charlie Kirk posted that although he's claiming he does not support biological males in women's sports, as the governor, he's not pushing it nor forcing any of the schools or the Department of Education in California to actually implement any of these new federal mandates. So let me go ahead and read you what Miss Linda McMahon, who is the education secretary, had to say to Mr. Gavin Newsom. So it says, breaking. Education Secretary Linda McMahon has just formally warned California Governor Gavin Newsom to comply with federal law on prohibiting males in women's sports and in other sex-separated spaces, or else risk losing federal funding. Your recent comments about male athletes playing in women's sports that is deeply unfair came to the attention of my office. So Miss Linda McMahon was like, wait a minute, he on podcast talking about this being unfair, but he didn't tell none of the schools in California that they need to implement this. Now that's strange. Let me write him a letter. Okay, so that's what Miss Linda McMahon did. So allowing participation in sex-separated activities based on gender identity places schools at risk of Title IX violations and loss of federal funding. As governor, you have a duty to inform California school districts of this risk. School personnel have no business promoting the false notion that kids can choose or change their sex. If a child does exhibit this behavior, the school has a duty to notify parents. If a student claims a gender identity at school, managing this issue through bureaucracy while hiding it from parents violates the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. As Secretary of Education, I am officially asking you to inform this department whether you will remind schools in California to comply with federal law by protecting sex-separated spaces and activities. I am also officially asking you to publicly assure parents that California teachers will not facilitate the fantasy of gender transitions for their children. Good work here by Secretary of Education McMahon and holding Gavin Newsom and the state of California accountable to protect families and the safety of young women. So that right there was like, okay, hold on, wait a minute now. She said, while you on this podcast and you making your rounds telling everybody you don't plan on running for no president, you might want to do what's being asked of you by this federal government. So why are you on here talking about rolling back some of these democratic ideologies? I'm gonna need you to actually put them into action. So that is hilarious because he's talking about, oh yeah, it's so unfair, and Democrats are toxic, and I've never really agreed with this. But you're not telling nobody in California, you're not enforcing any of this. So you're saying it, but you're not actually practicing it. And so remember, Democrat is like, it's not the messenger, it's the message. Now that message has moved on to real actions. Okay. So we can't just have the right person and we can't just be making the right statements. We're going to have to put the real practice into effect. And so I found that just fascinating, hilarious that he thought he was going to get away with that, get away with not actually making no real progress with regards to transgenders and transgender biological males in sports. I also want to share with you what the Secretary of Education posted in regards to her new sentiment toward all of this gender ideology. So she did like a PSA, and she partnered with Maine to let it be known that they are going state by state, making sure that these things are being put into place. And if you are a governor who does not want to abide by the federal government, you will have your funding withheld. And so I'm gonna go ahead and play this for you as well, so that you can see exactly their position on, gender ideology.
Hello, I'm U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, joined by Parents Defending Education founder and president Nicole Neely. Today, the Department of Education is announcing an unprecedented directed investigation into the Maine Department of Education for alleged violations of the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, or FERPA. We have heard disturbing reports that dozens of Maine school districts allow for schools to create gender plans that support a student's transgender identity and then hide those plans from parents, claiming they don't fall under education records. That is unacceptable and unlawful, if true. Parents and guardians have the right to access their child's education records to guide and safeguard their child's mental, emotional, and physical well-being, and we will uphold the law.
Thank you, Secretary McMahon. You are absolutely correct that parents have a right to know what is taking place while their children are under the care of school personnel. So many of these complaints were ignored by the previous administration. The practice of leaving parents in the dark while schools push students to undergo so-called gender transitions, and it became all too common. We're proud to stand with you and President Trump as you ensure that the law is being followed and that school districts do not infringe on parents' rights.
She said, listen, none of this was respected during the Biden administration. And now that Trump is in office, we are going to make sure that parents maintain their rights. Okay, we are not going to let these kids, these teachers, these politicians and these principals hide what is happening with our child. We're giving the rights of parenting back to the parents, and we are going to partner with the federal government to make sure that that is held up and ensured. And, Miss Linda, what's her name? Miss Linda McMahon, she's like, listen, Trump gave me a mandate. Trump gave me a role, gave me a job, and I'm going to enforce it. And they're serious about it. Trump is not playing. I don't know why y'all think Trump is playing. I don't know why people are sitting back home thinking this man is, all shits and giggles. This man is serious. And he had, the first time around, he didn't really know what he was doing. Second time around, he came in serious, all business. Everybody was talking and laughing about all of his, his staff members, and they weren't going to get confirmed and all this other craziness. All the people got confirmed. They just, all of them in there. Pam Bondi, RFK, all of them in there, just making it happen and getting stuff done. And they serious about it. And, that is what Americans voted for. Of course, is a large demographic that did not approve, but it is an even larger demographic that did. And so I am all for it. I am all for, this biological male in women's sports situation being rectified to where it can no longer happen. I do not agree with it. Girls need to be able to be in safe spaces. They need to be able to compete. They need to be able to continue to get their scholarships for college and things of that nature. And it's just unjust, in my opinion. I mean, I just, whatever you choose to identify is, that's your thing. However, I don't think your identity should be impeding on anybody else's life. And so, I'm always going to be an advocate for women's rights and women's safety, always. And so, but getting back to Gavin Newsom, I just think it's hilarious that this man is going on, these interviews and holding these conversations as if, he's really trying to roll back the agenda and the sentiments of the Democratic Party. But behind closed doors, he's not actually pushing any of it in his home state of California. So again, it's just all, smoke and mirrors, which is typical for these Democratic politicians. Unfortunate, but typical. But nonetheless, what is your opinion? Please do get in the comments and let me know how you feel about Gavin Newsom speaking about, the unfairness of biological males in women's sports and how he feels like the Democratic Party is toxic right now. However, not actually implementing any of these new policies in the state of California. I would love to get your opinion and continue this conversation. So if you have not already, please do go ahead, subscribe, like, and share. If you want to continue to support the channel a little further, you can most certainly follow the link in the description and buy your girl a cup of coffee. And with that being said, my name is Andrea Banu, and this is the Community Ledger. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and watch the next video by clicking right here.